The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the perfectly manicured greens of the country club. I stood there, a glass of bourbon in hand, watching the scene unfold before me. Couples laughed and chatted, their voices mingling with the gentle rustle of the leaves. It was a picture-perfect evening, one I had envisioned countless times with my wife, Claire. But as I scanned the crowd, my gaze landed on her, and everything changed. She was standing far too close to him, the golf instructor, Jack. I had seen him around, a charming man with an easy laugh and a way of making everyone feel at home. But that evening, as Claire leaned in, whispering something in his ear, I felt my heart drop into the pit of my stomach. A sense of dread washed over me, mingling with disbelief. Surely I was imagining things. A wave of nausea hit me as I watched her throw her head back in laughter, her eyes sparkling with something that wasn't meant for me. I had always trusted Claire. We built a life together, filled with shared dreams and memories. But in that moment, watching her with him, I felt the ground beneath me shift. My pulse quickened and I could feel the bourbon burning in my throat. I wanted to look away, to convince myself it was harmless, but my feet felt glued to the spot. The laughter continued and I could see the way she touched his arm, the way her smile lingered just a moment too long. I stumbled back from the edge of the patio, needing air, needing to think. My mind raced as I replayed the last few months in my head. Had I missed the signs? Late nights, the secretive phone calls. A gnawing feeling of betrayal twisted in my gut. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, loyal and attentive. But now I felt like a fool. I couldn't just stand there, paralyzed by anger and confusion. I needed to confront this, whatever it was. I turned away from the scene, retreating to the dim light of the club's bar. I ordered another drink, my hands trembling slightly as I raised the glass to my lips. My mind was a storm of emotions. I felt anger bubbling up, mixed with a sense of profound sadness. How could she do this? To me, to us. I was lost in thought when I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was Tom, my friend and fellow club member. He clapped me on the shoulder and asked how I was doing. I forced a smile, but I could feel the tension in my chest. Tom's gaze drifted toward Claire and Jack, and I could see the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Looks like Claire is having a good time," he said casually, but I could hear the underlying concern in his voice. "Yeah," I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just a little too good, don't you think?" Tom glanced back at them, then at me. "You okay, man?" I shook my head, unable to articulate the whirlwind of emotions raging inside me. "I'll be fine," I said, but it felt like a lie. The truth was, I was anything but fine. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering on the brink of something I couldn't quite define. As the night wore on, I found myself alone in the crowd, the laughter and chatter echoing around me like a distant memory. I couldn't shake the image of Claire and Jack together. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, a shattering of everything I thought I knew. I needed to know the truth. I needed to confront her. I needed to understand what had happened to the love we once shared. But as I stood there, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me, I knew one thing for sure. I would not let this go unanswered. I would find out what was really going on, and when I did, there would be consequences. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and dread. I tried to act normal around Claire, but every time I caught her smile or heard her laugh, I felt that familiar twist in my gut. I couldn't shake the image of her with Jack from my mind. It consumed me, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I had to know if there was something more to their connection, something that extended beyond the friendly facade. I started my investigation at the country club. I would watch from a distance, lurking in the shadows, trying to piece together the puzzle of their interactions. I noticed how Jack's demeanor changed when Claire was around. He was always charming, but with her he was different, more animated, more flirtatious. I could see how she lit up in his presence, a spark of excitement that I hadn't seen in her for months. It was infuriating. On Wednesday, I decided to go for a round of golf, hopping to catch them in a moment of weakness. As I made my way to the first tee, I spotted Claire and Jack on the driving range. She was swinging her club and he stood behind her, his hands guiding her form. I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to remain calm. This was just practice, I told myself, but as I watched, I could see the way he leaned in closer, whispering tips into her ear. After a few swings, Claire laughed again, and Jack brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. That small gesture felt like a punch to the gut. It was intimate, too intimate for a simple golf lesson. I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in my own life, a ghost haunting the edges of their happiness. I spent the next few days gathering information. I talked to other members at the club, trying to glean any insight into their relationship. Most people were oblivious, but a few whispered rumors about how Jack had a way with the ladies. I couldn't help but feel like a fool for not seeing it sooner. I was blinded by trust, and now it felt like a cloak of betrayal was draped over me. One evening, I ran into Sarah, an old friend from the club. She had a reputation for being in the know about everyone's business. I decided to take a chance and asked her about Jack. "He's a smooth talker, that one," she said, her eyes narrowing. "He's been known to get a little too close for comfort with some of the members' wives." My heart raced as I listened. "You think he's—" I couldn't bring myself to finish the question. "I wouldn't put it past him," she replied, her tone serious. But Claire, I thought she was different. I felt a mix of anger and despair. How could she betray me like this? I had been a good husband. I had supported her through everything, and now it felt like I was losing her to someone who only saw her as another notch on his belt. Determined to uncover the truth, I began to follow her on her trips to the club. I watched as she met with Jack for lessons, their laughter echoing in the air like a twisted melody. I took note of the little things, the way she would dress up for her lessons, the extra care she took in her appearance. Each detail felt like a dagger laced with betrayal. One Friday afternoon, I decided to take a more direct approach. I approached the pro shop under the pretense of needing new golf shoes, hoping to overhear any conversations about Claire and Jack. As I browsed the aisles, I overheard a couple of instructors chatting. "Jack's been spending a lot of time with Claire," one of them said. "He must really like her." "Yeah, but he's got a reputation," the other replied. "He's trouble, I wouldn't trust him." My heart sank. The whispers confirmed my worst fears. I felt like I was standing in quicksand, sinking deeper with every revelation. I couldn't confront Claire without evidence. I needed something concrete to show her the reality of what was happening, something to shatter the illusion she had built around her affair. That night, I sat in front of my computer, scrolling through social media. I found Claire's profile and began to comb through her photos, looking for anything that might indicate her infidelity. I was desperate for proof. As I clicked through her pictures, I found a few tagged photos from the club. There they were, Claire and Jack smiling together, their bodies leaning into each other in a way that felt far too intimate. I saved the images, my heart racing. I needed to confront her, but I also needed to know the extent of their relationship. I couldn't go in half-cocked. I had to be sure. The thought of what I would say to her, the confrontation that awaited, made my stomach churn. I was filled with anger and sadness, a potent cocktail of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. But as the night wore on, I knew one thing: I wouldn't let this go unanswered. I would expose Jack for what he was, and I would make sure Claire understood the gravity of her betrayal. The pieces were falling into place, and I was ready to confront the truth, no matter where it led. The day of the confrontation arrived, and I could feel the tension thrumming in my veins. I had gathered enough evidence, photos, whispers, and my own observations. I had been preparing for this moment, rehearsing the words I would say over and over in my mind. But as I stood in the living room, waiting for Claire to come home, I felt the weight of uncertainty press down on me. Would she deny it? Would she lie? Or would she break down and confess? When the front door finally opened, I could hear her cheerful voice calling out, "Honey, I'm home." I felt a pang of nostalgia at the sound. This was the woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with. But in that moment, she felt like a stranger. I turned to face her, my heart racing. Claire entered the room, her smile faltering as she noticed my serious expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, concern flooding her features. "Sit down, Claire. We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of anger. Her brow furrowed and she hesitated, glancing around as if searching for an escape. "Is this about the golf tournament this weekend? I told you I'd be busy with practice." No, it's not about that, I replied, my tone sharp. It's about you and Jack. The color drained from her face. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, summoning all the courage I could muster. I've seen you with him, Claire. The way you laugh, the way you touch him, it's more than just golf lessons. She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. I have proof. Photos, conversations, I know what's going on. Her eyes widened and I could see the panic rising in her. You're misunderstanding everything. Jack is just a friend. We're training together for the tournament. Don't lie to me, I shouted, the anger spilling out. I've watched you two together. You're not just friends. You've crossed a line and I need you to admit it. Claire's expression shifted from panic to defiance. You're being ridiculous. You're jealous because I'm spending time doing something I love. You don't own me. The words hit me like a physical blow. Jealousy? This wasn't about jealousy, it was about betrayal. I've supported you in everything, Claire. I've always been there for you. How could you do this to me? Her eyes softened for a moment and I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But then she straightened, crossing her arms defensively. You wouldn't understand, you just don't get it. I felt my heart sink. Get what? That you've been lying to me. That you've been sneaking around with someone who's supposed to be a friend. I can't believe you're doing this, she said, her voice trembling. You're blowing everything out of proportion. I've done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong, I echoed incredulously. You've betrayed my trust. You've betrayed our marriage. Tears began to well in her eyes, and for a moment I thought she might finally break, but she swallowed hard, her expression hardening. You're being dramatic. You don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the images I had saved. Look at this, I said, thrusting the screen in her face. Look at how close you are to him. This is. Just practice, Claire. This is something else. She took a step back, her expression shifting as she studied the photos. Those are just pictures. You're reading too much into it. Am I? I shot back, my voice rising again. You're standing there looking like you're in love with him. You're practically glowing. The tears spilled over as she turned away from me, her hands trembling. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. What didn't you mean? I pressed, my heart pounding. Did you mean to cheat on me? Did you mean to make a fool of me? I didn't plan for it, she cried, her voice cracking. It just happened. He made me feel alive again, something I haven't felt in years. The admission hit me like a freight train. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. So it's true, you're in love with him. No, she shouted, turning to face me, her eyes wild with emotion. I don't love him. I was just lost. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. You've been so focused on work, and I felt alone. The truth hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I had been so wrapped up in my career I hadn't realized how distant we had become, but that didn't excuse her actions. So instead of talking to me, you decided to sleep with him. I didn't sleep with him, she insisted, her voice rising again. We haven't gone that far, I swear. I felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished by the realization that even emotional betrayal was still betrayal. You've crossed a line, Claire. It doesn't matter how far it went. You've broken my trust. She fell silent, her face crumpling as reality set in. I'm so sorry, she whispered, wiping her tears. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. Sorry isn't enough, Claire. I need time to think. As I turned to leave the room, I could hear her sobbing behind me. I felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind, but I couldn't stay any longer. I needed space to process everything, to figure out what my next move would be. The confrontation had laid bare the truth, but it had also revealed the cracks in our marriage. I felt lost, unsure of what the future held. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let this go unanswered. I would expose Jack for what he was, and Claire would have to face the consequences of her actions. The days after the confrontation with Claire were a haze of emotions. I moved through the house like a ghost, the silence echoing around me. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone. The laughter that once filled our home had been replaced by an oppressive quiet, thick with tension and unspoken words. I needed to make sense of it all, to find a way to regain control over the situation that had spiraled so far out of my hands. As I sat in my office, staring at the wall, my mind kept drifting back to Jack, the golf instructor who had wormed his way into my wife's heart, or perhaps just her bed. He was the catalyst of this chaos, and I felt a burning desire for justice. Exposing him seemed like the only way. to reclaim my dignity, to show everyone what kind of man he truly was. But was it worth the fallout? Would it hurt Claire more than it would hurt him? I paced the floor, wrestling with my thoughts. The moral implications of my decision weighed heavily on me. I had always believed in loyalty and honor, and now I was contemplating revenge. But as I recalled the way Claire had betrayed me, the anger bubbled to the surface again. She had made me feel like a fool, and I was done being passive. I had to act. I decided to visit the club again, this time with a clear purpose. I needed to gather more evidence to understand the extent of Jack's influence within the community. If I was going to expose him, I wanted to do it right, make sure it was undeniable. I donned my best golf attire, determined to blend in and observe. As I arrived at the club, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. The familiar sights, the pristine greens, the elegant clubhouse, felt tainted now. I headed to the bar, ordering a drink to steady my nerves. I needed to keep my wits about me while I gathered information. I struck up a conversation with a couple of members, casually steering the topic toward Jack. "He seems to be quite popular around here, doesn't he?" I remarked, trying to sound nonchalant. "Oh, absolutely," one of them replied, a middle-aged man named Greg. "Jack has a way with people. He's a great instructor and the ladies love him. But I've heard whispers, about him getting too close to some of the members." "Really?" I feigned surprise, leaning in. "What kind of whispers?" Greg lowered his voice, glancing around as if he were telling a secret. "Just rumors, but I've heard he's been a little too friendly with some of the wives. You know how it is in these circles." I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of information I needed, evidence of Jack's reputation that I could use against him. The more I gathered, the more confident I became in my decision to expose him. After chatting for a while, I excused myself and headed to the pro shop. I needed to speak with the club management to see if they had any concerns about Jack. Behavior. I approached the manager, a stern-looking woman named Lisa, and introduced myself. "Hi, Lisa. I've been a member here for a while and I wanted to bring something to your attention," I said, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "Oh, what's on your mind?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I've noticed some questionable behavior from one of the instructors, Jack. I've heard rumors about him getting too close to some of the members' wives," I said, watching her reaction closely. Lisa sighed, looking thoughtful. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We take these matters seriously, but you know how difficult it can be to prove anything without concrete evidence." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. "I understand, but I have some evidence I think you should see." Her expression shifted slightly, curiosity piqued. "What kind of evidence?" I hesitated for a moment, weighing my options. Should I show her the photos? Part of me wanted to save that for a more public reveal. But then again, if I wanted to ensure Jack was taken seriously, I needed to provide something tangible. "I have some photos of him with my wife," looking far too cozy for my comfort, I admitted, my voice steady. Her eyes widened slightly. "Photos? That's serious. If you could provide those, I'd be more than willing to investigate further." I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. I could finally take action against Jack. "I'll send them over as soon as I can." As I left the pro shop, I felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. I was about to embark on a path that could change everything. My heart raced at the thought of exposing Jack, of making sure he faced the consequences of his actions. But deep down, I also knew that this decision would affect Claire. Would she see me as the hero or the villain in this story? I couldn't dwell on that now. I had to stay focused on my goal. I would expose Jack, and in doing so, I would reclaim my power. I would show everyone what he truly was, a predator who preyed on the vulnerable. That evening, I sat down to organize my evidence. I compiled the photos, the whispers from the members, and my own observations. I was methodical, ensuring I had everything in order. I felt a sense of clarity for the first time since discovering Claire's betrayal. I was ready to take action, to reveal the truth. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was about more than just revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of self. I would not allow this man to tarnish my marriage or my reputation any longer. With a deep breath, I prepared to send the evidence to Lisa. I was ready to ignite the firestorm that would follow. There would be consequences for Jack, and I would make sure of it. The following days felt like a whirlwind of anticipation and dread. I had sent the evidence to Lisa, the club manager, and now I was waiting for a response. I knew that I had to prepare myself for the fallout of my actions. The thought of exposing Jack and the potential chaos it would unleash made my stomach churn. But the anger and betrayal I felt toward him and Claire overpowered my fear. I had made my choice, and I was ready to face whatever came next. On the day of the club's monthly member meeting, I arrived with a knot in my stomach. I could feel the tension in the air as I walked into the grand ballroom, members mingling and chatting amiably, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. I scanned the room, searching for familiar faces, and my gaze landed on Claire. She looked radiant, chatting with a group of friends, her laughter ringing out like a bell. I felt a pang of sadness mixed with anger. How could she act so carefree when everything was crumbling around us? As I took my seat, I noticed Jack across the room, leaning against the wall with a smug smile on his face. It made my blood boil. He had no idea what was about to happen, how his world was about to be turned upside down. Lisa took the stage, her demeanor serious as she prepared to address the members. "Thank you all for coming this evening," she began, her voice steady. "Before we proceed with the usual agenda, I need to address a matter of great importance regarding one of our instructors." The room fell silent, and I felt the weight of every eye in the room shift toward her. I could see Claire's expression change as she realized something was off. "Recently, I received some concerning reports regarding Jack, our golf instructor," Lisa continued, her gaze steady. "It has come to my attention that his behavior with certain members has been inappropriate." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and I could see Jack's smile fade as he straightened up, confusion etched on his face. "Specifically, there have been allegations of him getting too close to the wives of our members," Lisa said, her voice firm. "I have gathered evidence, including photographs and testimonies from multiple members, and it is with regret that I announce he is hereby banned from the club, effective immediately." The room erupted into a mixture of gasps, whispers, and shocked expressions. I felt a rush of adrenaline as reality set in. I had done it. I had exposed him. Jack's face turned a shade of crimson as he stepped forward, his anger palpable. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. "You can't ban me without proof. This is slander." Lisa held up her hand to silence him. "The evidence speaks for itself, Jack. Your behavior has been unprofessional and we cannot allow it to continue." "What evidence?" he demanded, his voice rising. "You're just going to take his word for it?" He gestured toward me, his eyes blazing with fury. I stood up, my heart racing. "It's not just my word, Jack. I have the photos. I have witnesses. You think you can charm your way through this? You've crossed a line and now you'll face the consequences." The room was electric with tension. I could feel Claire's eyes on me, a mixture of surprise and horror. I had done what I set out to do, but the reality of the situation began to sink in. I was exposing not just Jack, but also the reality of Claire's betrayal. Jack glared at me, his expression filled with contempt. "You'll regret this, you know. You think you've won, but you've only made a fool of yourself." "Maybe," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "But I'd rather be a fool than a coward who hides behind lies." The confrontation continued, but I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had taken a stand, and for the first time since discovering Claire's infidelity, I felt empowered. I had fought back against the betrayal that had threatened to consume me. As the meeting concluded, I found myself surrounded by fellow members who approached me to express their support. "You did the right thing," one woman said, her voice low. "He's been a problem for a while." I nodded, grateful for their validation, but amidst the congratulations, I felt a heaviness settle in my chest. I had exposed Jack, but I had also put Claire in a position of vulnerability. I could see her standing off to the side, her expression a mix of anger and sorrow. I approached her cautiously, unsure of what to say. "I didn't mean for it to come to this," I said, my voice low, "but I couldn't stand by and let him hurt you or anyone else." "By hurting me," she shot back, her eyes blazing. "You think this solves anything? You think this makes it better?" "I'm not saying it does," I replied, trying to keep my tone calm. "But I had to do something. You deserve better than To be with someone like him. Claire shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. Maybe I do deserve better, but I never asked for this. You could have talked to me. You didn't have to go behind my back. I felt a pang of regret. I know I should have, but I felt betrayed and I wanted to protect you. Protect me, she echoed, incredulous. You've just made everything worse. You've humiliated me in front of everyone. I looked around the room, the weight of her words settling heavily on my shoulders. I'm sorry, Claire. I thought you needed to see the truth. Truth, she scoffed, her voice trembling with emotion. You think this is the truth? This is just more betrayal. As she turned away, I felt the chasm between us widen. I had fought for justice, but in doing so, I had ripped open the wounds of our marriage. I felt a sense of loss wash over me, mingling with the satisfaction of exposing Jack. The consequences of my actions were far-reaching, and I could see that now. I stood there, watching Claire walk away, her shoulders hunched in. Defeat, the aftermath of the ban weighed heavily on my heart. I had won the battle, but at what cost? The realization hit me hard. Revenge had not brought the closure I had hoped for. Instead, it had only deepened the rift between Claire and me. I had exposed Jack, but I had also exposed the fragility of our relationship. The road ahead was uncertain, and I knew that healing would take time. As I left the club that night, I felt the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. I had taken a stand, but now I had to face the reality of what lay ahead. The aftermath of the ban would ripple through our lives, and I could only hope that somehow we would find a way to navigate the consequences together. The days that followed the ban felt surreal. Jack was gone from the club, but his absence left a void that echoed through every corner of my life. I had taken a stand, exposing him for the man he was, but the victory felt hollow. The thrill of revenge quickly faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss and regret. Claire and I were like two ships passing in the night, our conversations strained and awkward. We avoided discussing the fallout, but the tension hung heavy in the air. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the way she flinched whenever I brought up the club or Jack. The truth was, I had won the battle but lost the war for our marriage. I spent my nights replaying the confrontation in my mind, wondering if I could have approached it differently. Maybe I should have sought counsel, talked to Claire about my suspicions before taking action. But the anger had clouded my judgment and I had acted impulsively. I had let my emotions drive me, and now I was left with the aftermath. One evening I found myself sitting on the back porch, staring out at the fading light. The world felt muted, as if the vibrancy of life had been dulled by the events of the past few weeks. I sipped my bourbon, contemplating everything that had transpired. I had exposed Jack, but in doing so, I had also exposed the cracks in my relationship with Claire. As I sat there, I heard the door creak open behind me. Claire stepped out, her silhouette framed by the dim light of the house. She hesitated for a moment before joining me on the porch. The air was thick with unspoken words, and I could feel the tension between us. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. I nodded, my heart racing. "Yes, we need to." She took a seat beside me, her expression serious. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I know I messed up, but so did you." "I know," I admitted, feeling the weight of her words. "I acted out of anger. I didn't think about how it would affect you." Claire sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I should have been honest with you. I let things go too far with Jack, but I never meant for it to happen. I was feeling lost and I turned to him for comfort." I nodded, the pain of her admission piercing through me. "I understand that now, but instead of talking to me, you chose to go to him." I felt blindsided. "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "I was scared. I didn't know how to reach out to you anymore. It felt like you were always busy and I felt alone." The truth of her words struck me hard. I had been so focused on work, on building a life for us, that I had neglected the emotional connection we once had. "I should have been there for you. I took you for granted, and I'm sorry for that." Tears glimmered in her eyes, and for the first time since the confrontation, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Maybe we can work through this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's going to take time. We need to rebuild that trust." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "I want to try, Claire. I want to rebuild what we had, but it'll take both of us being honest and open." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I promise to be honest with you. I don't want to lose you." The sincerity in her voice struck a chord deep within me. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and the need for vulnerability. But for the first time, in weeks I felt a sense of clarity. We had both made mistakes, but we also had the chance to learn and grow from them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the porch, I reached for Claire's hand. It felt like a small gesture, but in that moment it symbolized a willingness to reconnect. "We'll take it one step at a time," I said, squeezing her hand gently. She smiled through her tears, and I felt a flicker of hope. We had a long way to go, but the willingness to confront our issues together was a start. The betrayal had shaken the foundation of our marriage, but it didn't have to be the end. That night, as we sat together on the porch, we began to talk, not just about Jack or the affair, but about our dreams, our fears, and the love that had brought us together in the first place. We shared stories from our past, moments that had shaped us, and slowly, the walls between us began to crumble. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to fight for us. I would work to earn back Claire's trust, and in doing so, I hoped to rediscover the love that had once felt so effortless. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but together, we could navigate the complexities of love, trust, and forgiveness. In the end, I realized that true strength lies not in revenge, but in the courage to confront our mistakes and the willingness to rebuild what was broken. I had exposed Jack, but in the process, I had also learned to confront my own shortcomings. With Claire by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. We were in this together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about our future. As I looked at her, I knew that we would emerge from this stronger than before. It was time to embrace the journey of healing, hand in hand. And with that, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the new chapter of our lives, filled with promise and the possibility of redemption.